in my view, I think that placemaking that is led by community is much more likely to not lead to displacement because it's place-based, it's idiosyncratic, it has the personality of the people who participate, and then those folks are there helping to steward that time and blood, sweat, and tears that everybody put into it. I will say though, since I'm a pragmatist, that I think the main thing that has to do with that is housing policy. So we don't want to be in a situation where it's like, let's not do greening because that could lead to gentrification. I think that is a tiny part, and the bigger part is housing policy, rents policy. So I feel like we should all, continue to strive to make our city beautiful and make sure that we're partnering with those policy experts and others to make sure that in the process we're not displacing folks or having gentrification. So just want to lay out that I thought that was a really interesting question, but that I want to hope that we can do this without that happening if we're thoughtful, if we're place-based, and if everybody's working together. Do want to put in there, even though I know this is not part of the question, that we run a lot of grant programs, speaking of place-based interventions, and just want to welcome everybody to chat with me after this about needs that you may see in your community, on your block, or ideas that you have, and we want to support those and lift them up where possible. So, yeah.
I just want to say also, I'm sad that Alondra couldn't come. I really encourage everyone to check out Poder and their initiatives, especially like the Hummingbird Farm and stuff. I know that she was really disappointed she couldn't make it, but she's working with youth right now. That's the reason why she couldn't be here, so it's a very good reason. What does greening mean to me? I've been a nightlife and service industry worker for decades now, and I am part of the Rain Guardian program. But as a Californian, born and raised, so much of my how this is framed for me is around things like water and the ongoing conquest of water and allocating it, moving it from one place so that this place can be developed, only to take it from another place to feed that development. And this has been the story of California for many years, and has informed so much of my family's existence here. I remember when my grandparents were first looking for a place to rent, my great-grandmother said, well, don't ever live in the San Fernando Valley because it'll flood every 25 years or so, and because you'll be right there where that wash comes down and stuff. And so I've taken a lot of that in how I act as a rain guardian and support this initiative and try to be a good steward. Is that and we were talking about this earlier, is to try to avoid this compartmentalization. I think that to go to the second question is that greening doesn't live in a vacuum unto itself, and I think it's important that we recognize that. When I am tending to the bioswales on Mission in Valencia, they're not very. A lot of them haven't been popular with a lot of businesses around it, and I've had to explain kind of and contextualize why they are important and what they're actually there for. That they're helping divert water away from that actual 100-year flood zone that's right there, and that this has direct benefits for small businesses there that have been inundated sometimes every 10 years, 5 years, and getting with increasing frequency. So I think that, and that we also have to acknowledge that when you do these kinds of implementations, they need to be informed by the community. They need to make sense for the community, and they also have to be framed within the greater history of what this place is, that what this place has always been, and that these areas that are now covered in concrete and hardscape were once sacred waterways and estuaries, and that our very existence is contingent upon them being reintegrated into our society, and that yes, this is a city, and in many ways things like density make sense, but also cities have to be livable, and they have to make sense within the world that they exist.
Those are all really good answers. I'm struck by sort of the diversity of all of these different, how, you know, you were talking about the multimodality of green infrastructure and how it really serves all of these different purposes. And so these are clearly things that benefit our communities, and Stephen, you're talking about helping people understand how it benefits them, and sometimes that's a little bit of a lift. But we're also a really unique, ecological system, and have very specific barriers, very unique barriers that only really exist in San Francisco. And I'm not even talking about lack of federal funding. I'm just talking, I mean, from earthquakes to, you know, our fog and marshland and our dune, you know, setup, our rising sea level, floodplains. I mean, what do you think of when, you know, over the next 10 years should be our priorities as neighborhoods, so all these folks out here that are working in their neighborhoods, what are the environmental and ecological barriers that we should be proactively addressing now, and like what can we really be doing?
You want to go this way this time?
Okay.
Mix it up.
I think that that's a good way of framing it. I think that sometimes barriers are not seen, and I think that, again, going back to my family's history here, my great-great-grandfather died in the 1906 earthquake, and he actually, they pulled him out of the collapse of the Valencia Hotel, which was that really famous picture where it's like slid into the street. And it's informed so much of who we are and how we see things. And I think one of the things that I think about with San Francisco, you know, our emblem on the flag and in all of our iconography is this phoenix rising from the ashes. And I think that comes with that, like, is optimism and hope for out of tragedy. But I think on the other side of that is a hubris that has come to also correlate with that thinking in a frankly colonial mindset that we can continue to conquer and overcome nature, and that we can make things happen as we see them fit to be. Again, completely separate from the reality of what it actually is. And I think that in the future and in the present, what we should be doing is looking again for ways in which we are going to maintain the balance, the very precarious balance in which we exist, which is, you know, keeping some of these spaces open, keeping some of this land uncovered, keeping, you know, like what, you know, the famous fog, part of it doesn't come from the ocean, it comes from the humidity rising from the earth, and if there's nowhere for it to rise, then it's not going to be there. You know, when you have higher buildings, that also comes with significant wind shear. So, like, you know, when we're doing these implementations, we have to make sure that they make sense and that they're not going to threaten our very existence in the long run.
It's hard to follow up. Let's see. I mean, such a tough question. Like, what should we be doing in the next 10 years? I'm like a work planner, so that's a really long to-do list to do. I think that the challenges that we face are in so many different buckets, right? There's like increasing our technical understanding of what is going to happen as the climate changes, and I feel like we're doing that as a community and as a city, but we need to keep going and go faster, because we're going to be seeing those impacts in so many different ways, whether it's rising sea levels or extreme precipitation or heat. But that all comes back again to how, green infrastructure contributes positively to all of those. So it's kind of this thing where you see these threats emerging, but you see solutions that can address multiple threats. That to me is really exciting. I think another thing that we need to be doing in these next 10 years is to be like finding our kindred spirits, which is part of what we're doing here tonight, right? Because we all have to be connected to meet these challenges. We have to be having community ambassadors, like the fact that Stephen is out there explaining to folks why are these rain gardens here on Valencia so critical, and in San Francisco we have such a dynamic city that I'm sorry to say that as soon as you explain that to someone, they might move, and then you'll have to do it again, So I think we have to do that work of making these kinds of connections again and again, and continuing to connect with those of us who are rooted here for the long term as well, and deepening those connections. I'm also really hopeful, since I'm part of city government, that we can work more closely all together to deliver implementation in a more streamlined and integrated manner. So I'm really hopeful that the next 10 years will bring more of that, and I think advocacy around that from the community is really important, so that everyone in government understands that that's wanted, that's desired, and we can prioritize that better amongst so many competing priorities. So what else? I mean, so many things. I think working in impactful ways in the next 10 years. So it's there's a desire to do everything at once, right? You want to fix all the things and put in all the green infrastructure that you can. I'm really grateful to have a super strategic team who can look and see oh my gosh, where are the most impervious surfaces in our city? Schools. That is not okay, right? We want to be serving our kids with landscapes that nurture them and that don't increase heat and that manage stormwater. So if you look and see, here's a landowner that has hundreds and hundreds of parcels, and most of them are over 90% impervious. Let's get focused on that. So I do think another thing that we need to do in San Francisco, we tend to try to hang all of the ornaments on every single tree. It's really hard to get stuff done if we don't prioritize. So I do think, in answer to your question, in the next 10 years, we have got to be incredibly strategic in how we work, and know that we can't sort of accomplish every single thing at once. And so let's use all this brain power to find the levers that we can pull that are going to do the most good for the most people. I think those are some of the main things that come to mind with that question.
So planning is not San Francisco's problem, right? This is the San Francisco Bay Area. San Francisco in particular has a legacy of being ahead of the curve in environmental justice work. UC Berkeley, Stanford, this whole continuum of incredible earth-based sciences. People who are interested in ecological conversations and have been historically for quite a long time. San Francisco has this legacy of being on the front edge of that conversation. And because of that, San Francisco has, what are we on, the 6th climate adaptive strategy plan for San Francisco Bay, right? There's an incredible amount of planning that already exists. I look at San Francisco and I experience San Francisco as a place where you're standing at the edge of a wishing well. And all of those very well articulated projects with lots of plans and design implementation strategies and data supported X, Y's, and Z's that were wished upon by the latest NGO and other nonprofit group got thrown in the well, and it's literally been sitting there for some time, actually. And all you have to do is walk around some of these communities and sit in some of these community meetings, And you can hear these well-articulated projects that have been sitting in this wishing well, just waiting for actual action, right? So San Francisco's problem is not enough planning. We're plenty of planning. It's really smart too. We got really good, very, very cutting edge, incredibly focused, forward-thinking folks here in this part of the country. Yay. Right? So I don't think that's the problem. I think it's the action. Whether it's getting focused and getting the right strategy so that you can take that next step forward, no matter what, it's the next step forward. And that's the problem that we have. And facing an ever-changing and ever-evolving funding climate and political climate and social climate and, there's a certain amount of just like survival instinct that's kicked in for a lot of folks right now, right? Which means we're really just focused on getting through. But the reality of it is that the San Francisco Bay Area has incredibly articulate knowledge in the space of ecological engagement, and it's multifaceted. It's like sitting in the center of grandmother's spider web. If you need to pull on something that's community-based, it's already there. If you need something that's ready to go for government-supported grants and has that level of articulation, it's already there. These different neighborhood projects are where it's landing. So in a lot of ways, it's like you're also articulating. The power of small communities is going to be where we stand. The capacity for either neighborhoods or community groups or other types of partnerships to come back together in strong joint work focused on getting those projects across finish lines is going to be, I think, where we're going to, if anything, where we can shine, right? The interesting balancing act that we have to face is that balancing act between getting back to that awareness of where we sit in the circle, right? It's kind of a little strange. We've deeply centered human priorities. And we are a human-centric system. So even when we're talking about ecological systems, we're curbing already in our minds. Already even just like, hey, I want to do a cool ecological thing. Oh, all right. And the first thing Sarah's doing, she's flipping the Rolodex. Okay, well, what part of the city are you going to be in? What's, what are the permit structures? And what are we going to do? Are there bike lanes? Am I going to have to do this? Can I put a tree in sand? You're just like, you're flipping through all the barriers already in the first 36 seconds of starting that program. And isn't that a fascinating and strange reflex? Right? It's almost like we need to shift that reflex that is not centering the human condition and instead going, okay, well, cool, let's start talking possibilities. Maybe I don't need to put a bioswale. Maybe it needs to be, I don't know. The point being, we need the balancing act again, right? Like we're still talking about land and space and commodification. And we're actually supposed to be talking about land as that thing that's all here because as the human being cycle of all things, humans came last. We're the babies, right? Nature all came first. So what does that mean? Does nature need humans? No. Do we need nature? Yeah. We like to breathe, right? We like food, grows in the ground. We like water. It's a whole thing. So really when you think about the shift in the relationship, it's strange how we've dominated that experience. And kind of recentering or rebalancing that relationship might be part of the good work we have to do to get to the right actions and the right strategies for the right projects that are meeting the needs of communities that have already dropped their penny in the wishing well. I really like that. The human-centric versus healthy land, healthy nature-centric, and putting that in, as a priority in our decision-making conversations. I mean, you all actually touched on different variations of equity, what I would put into this category of, you know, how do we divide limited resources and competing, you know, needs and a balance of all of these things in an equitable way. And we are in the Mission District, and I, you know, I worked in the Tenderloin and for many, many years. Also has had, you know, neighborhood that still today continues to have the least amount of open space, open green space in the entire city, and yet does not get its share of funding from the city in terms of, you know, rec and park and trees and other types of green infrastructure. And I'm just wondering if you can just go quickly and just sort of touch on what do we really need to face and be united around in our advocacy to ensure that it is equitable, whether it's making sure that DPW releases the NOFAs for community tree planting, you know, or whether it is making sure that there's parcel tax dollars that go to, you know, remediating floodwaters and doing that kind of work, prioritizing that work in the mission, whether it's making sure that we have, you know, grants that are available for community facilities, like we have many in the mission, to be able to, you know, put solar panels or have green jobs programs. I mean, what does that look like for a neighborhood like the Mission, and how can everyone in this room be a part of making that happen?
We're gonna do equity right now, you get to go.
Oh. The middle child goes first this time. That's a tricky question. I think, you know, a lot of my work is very spatial. You know, just looking at our 8 urban watersheds. If you don't know what watershed you live in, you should definitely talk afterwards. You can get a watershed sticker. I have some beautiful watershed maps. I do want to look forward to a time when people know their neighborhood, but they also know their watershed, so that they're part of that circle that you're talking about, like our ecological systems. But I find that in terms of the spatial distribution of investment, of care and stewardship, you know, these kinds of mappings are always really compelling to me, and so I feel like I always try to follow the data, right? Like, we know where we need to work together to reduce both heat, like asthma, lack of trees. You know, you can see these corridors along Alamany down 280 into the Bayview, in parts of the Mission and parts of the Tenderloin, and so I think, you know, acknowledging and following, you know, facts that we know to be true is going to be really important. And again, like, when we invest, let's try to make everything multi-purpose so that we're solving multiple problems at once. And of course, be led and informed by the environments that we're working in. Like Stephen was alluding to, you know, if you're standing in what used to be underwater or used to be a marsh, honoring that is going to end up with a better result, because we will never win against water, and we don't want to, right? It shouldn't be a fight. It should be, listen to what the landscape is telling you. This used to be a creek, so you're gonna have to do X, Y, Z thing. Or, hey, this used to be. So I think appreciating the way that the landscape functions is important, and bringing that into an equity conversation, and then appreciating what the local knowledge in the neighborhood can bring to bear on the types of solutions that we're looking for is also really critical. Yeah, I think there are a lot of different ways that we can go about that, you know, from my perspective as a planner, but then there's also like growing the sort of political power that people have and making sure that voices are heard. That also helps to sort of even the playing field and have others understand what folks are looking for, like in their neighborhoods, in their public spaces, in their public services. So, yeah.
I dream of a day when kind of the narrative of a lack of resources and equity to, you know, disadvantaged neighborhoods is kind of a thing of the past. I think it's an old narrative, and I can't wait for her to be tired of it. Right? Let's just be tired of it so we don't do it anymore. This is a long-standing history. It's a long-standing history of neighborhoods in San Francisco and other places around the country that aren't getting the resources that they need in order to have equitable access to many things. And I think it's really, like, it's kind of shattering in your soul when part of that conversation is literally access to trees. You know, and access to dirt. Like, when dirt, it's kind of funny. You walk around the Mission, you see people sweeping dust around, and you realize they're not even really sweeping dirt, they're sweeping brake dust from the cars and the buses. The ecological conversation of the Mission has disappeared. And that should be a narrative we're tired of so that we fix it. Right? Part of understanding that conversation, again, it's the project's already in the wishing well. I'm on 16 different sea level rise committees. That's just the sea level rise ones, right? And 9 of those are community-based conversations and committees that were developed in already existing communities that are already facing ecological disadvantage. Whether it's the space is too hot, so there's no tree, you know, there's no trees, there's no nothing, to every high tide, you know, Auntie's house has 6 feet of water in the basement. And that's already something that's happening now. We don't have to wait for storm surge, like, it's already here, right? So the sea level rise conversation is being talked about as a future problem. We have to get ready for sea level rise. Well, I hate to burst everybody's bubble, but she's been rising for a while. Is her rise and her speed and all of these things compounded and influenced by current situations? Absolutely. But listen, there's shell mounds that were thousands and thousands of years old that are under 8 feet of water along the base surface. I promise when they were built on land. Right? So sea level rise has been around. And it's kind of like, don't build the thing in the creek bed, right? Or, hey, Pacifica, we love you. Stop building the homes on the seawall that keeps sliding off into the ocean. Right? There's something that happens when we get practical. And that relationship is kind of almost like we got to be like, all right, fine, we're going to finally do it. We finally deal with it. Sorry, that might have been a bad call, y'all. Let's move that. You know, let's do the thing. And it's part of that action step. Again, it's not like we have a lack of planning and how to get to the intersection between equity and ecology. We have plenty of planning. And not only that, we got plenty of thought process and good studies and good education processes. UC Berkeley's cutting edge on some of these things. They've got all kinds of literature and projects and pilot studies available for people to implement anywhere. I'm on a couple of those advisory committees too. The problem is that nobody's kind of right? That's it. I think that's the challenge.
Stephen, you have to.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is, the short answer is action. You know, we are educated, and if you aren't educated, and if you really are an ally, then you need to get educated. And we have to wake up to the fact that there are no easy answers. You know, I think, especially, I'm not gonna lie, like, things are fucked up right now. Like, we are living in this fascist hell, and a lot of us console ourselves by saying, oh, we live in San Francisco, we live in a bubble, we're all aligned. That's not true. And so if you are really looking to employ equity in your life and you're looking to be realistic about climate change, then you need to seek out the answers that reflect those realities and not the easy answers, and not, if you want to get political, vote for people just because, well, most of the things they say are nice, and they're pro-immigrant or they're pro-LGBTQ or whatever, but guess what? They're advocating for giving everything to a corporation. I think that also, like, it's not as oversimplified as, like, I love street trees. I love a canopy, but sometimes you don't need a canopy in a certain part of town. Like we're just talking about, like sometimes it just needs to be an open landscape. It needs to be scrub. It needs to be dirt. It needs, instead of brake dust, it needs to be these. It needs to be these things, and we can't hide behind words like greening and being an environmentalist, because, as I was reminded of, the Nazis were also environmentalists. That was a big part of their initiative, was being outdoors and all these things. So, so you gotta.
Everybody loves nature. Everybody loves nature.
You can't just love nature. You gotta put some context into that. Otherwise, you're not really
Steven
being an
took
ally. So, yeah.
Well, on that note, yes. Okay, so that is, I will be thinking of that as my big takeaway from that. So you're right. You've all talked about action. You've all are connected to different community-based organizations and coalitions and different people that I think believe that and understand that they have a role to play. Is there one project? Is there one project that maybe you're already working on? Maybe not Sarah's 19 sea level rise committees, but
I love them all.
oh, exactly. But is there something that, for everybody in this room that wants to be involved in something, that wants to be able to get their hands around something, is willing to sign a petition, is willing to go lobby at City Hall, is willing to write a letter, as a part of a grant, application, what is one project that they should be aware of? Is it like visioning what is going to happen with, who knows, maybe the Central Freeway will come down someday. I don't know, maybe. And that Caltrans property could be used for something besides hardscape. Maybe it's Valencia Cesar Chavez area. Maybe it's, working with the urban agriculturists in the neighborhood around sustainable farming, because we know groceries are going up and will continue to do so. We've got to figure out a way to, be sustainable. Stephen, go. What's your dream project?
I think that it's less about
money is no issue. Dream big.
Less about one and more about the application. Like, we need to again reframe about how we look at things. Is it when the Central Freeway comes down, because it is structurally unsafe, it will come down at some point, either by us or by nature. And so there is all this Caltrans easement that is mostly unused. It could be water diversion. It could be land that absorbs water, that it prevents the flooding in the Northern Mission. That could all happen right now while the freeway is still standing, and really setting the direction of where that goes. We could be reframing how we look at how we source food. The Central Valley is collapsing, and yet we constantly are looking for ways to kind of buoy it for like another 10 years. We should be growing food here like we did before, and out in the Portola, they've been trying to turn the greenhouses into a farm for a minute. So that would be great, there's all these different things, and that's what I was trying to get to. And what I was saying earlier is that, start really taking a hard look at these little things that you wouldn't initially pop out at you as like, oh, I'm going to get behind this. I would love everyone should adopt a rain garden. You should all do that. I think absolutely. I think it's also a real it's a real way to get into the real, because like it is what it needs to be. It's a water diversion. It's these native plant systems, these ecosystems, but you also get to understand how your community engages with those ecosystems and their own ecosystem, and that we have a lot of other social issues that are happening, and they often converge with those rain gardens. so I think that is that's what I would say is look at the micro, look at what's literally like 5 feet outside your front door, and see how you can take action there.
Amazing. Love that. Everyone should definitely adopt a rain garden. I think we also need to, as a city, really accept and engage in the fact that, even though we all feel like we're in this liberal bubble, people do not all agree with each other, and that is okay, right? And so sometimes we'll go out and be like, how about some green infrastructure here? And people are like, no, we don't want that. And I'm sure that this group may find that surprising, but that's part of why these conversations, having ambassadors, having connections is important, because people do not all agree. And there are trade-offs. And I think the real part of the real is that if you encounter somebody and they're worried about their housing, they may not care about green infrastructure, right? They may be like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about, and I think these trade-offs are super profound, and we are not all aligned as a city on these trade-offs in a real way of like, this is the money trade-off. This is the actual budget trade-off. And those are really pragmatic things that you have to work through if you want action to happen. If you want to go from plan to action, we have to be willing to have these tough conversations. And also those of us who are wanting, one outcome might sometimes not get that outcome, right? And then we just keep fighting the fight, or not a fight, persuading the persuading. It's not fighting. We don't want to be fighting. That's not who we are. So yeah, I would say that. But back to the question, which is like, is it both? What is a cool project and what is a dream? Like a cool existing project and a dream project?
That's still going, that people can get involved in like now or push for it.
Okay. Let's see. So if you are involved in a school as a parent or a volunteer or part of the PTA or a neighbor, get involved. These are spaces where we can help young San Franciscans have a better daily experience and have one where they're not like sweeping around dust, right? We should not be sweeping around dust. We should have dirt. We should So I would say definitely get engaged with your local school if you can, and propose green infrastructure, propose greening, because these are huge spaces. I don't know if any of you saw way back in the day, there was a really sad campaign, which was profound but so depressing, that showed like all these pictures of like schools and prisons, and nobody could tell the difference because they looked the same. That being said, they should both be green, right? We don't want to they should both be green. But so these are really impervious spaces that we need to come together as a city and be like, that's not where we want our kids to spend like the most of their time. I think the other public space that we should all be rallying around is our streets. Our streets are 25% of our city, and they're 37% of the impervious surface in our city. Streets are amazing conduits for people and energy, not just cars, water, and if we could transform these spaces, I think that would be amazing. We need a streets bond. If you want something to advocate for a streets bond. I'm now just talking as like a person. It's not my PUC thing. I have no purview over that. So, but I think we need a streets bond. I think that would be amazing to have a resilient streets bond. But in my stormwater role, I think an amazing future project would be to continue to just be guided by our historic creek ways and search for more creek daylighting opportunities, which are super compelling to everyone, right? They're imaginative, they're beautiful, people get super excited. So I think those are really fun things to advocate for. If you want to go look at green infrastructure that already exists, come let me know, because I'm really proud and excited that we have taken action. Like, we are not in just planning phase right now. We've got hundreds and hundreds of green infrastructure projects that we've managed to wade through the bureaucracies of government and make real in the landscape, and you should go look at them. Some of them are in better shape than others. If you find the ones that are not in good shape, as Stephen has done, help us out. We need help. But some of them are amazing and beautiful. If you want to see huge, large-scale green infrastructure that's managing tons and tons of acres and protecting our bay in a separate sewer area, go out to Treasure Island and you can see some new green infrastructure that's really interesting. Go to the Mission Bay Stormwater Park, also very interesting. Or happy to chat with you guys after, but yeah. What's that? Yosemite, yeah, and we're gonna do our creek daylighting project there. It's at like 97% design. Come on, let's get to 100. So,
Do Sarah's.
yeah, can we get there?
Come on, let's go,
I'm
Sarah,
gonna
let's
invite
go.
Sarah to like push them over the edge.
I'm already on Yosemite Slope committee.
Okay.
I am.
Yeah. Wait, which way are we going? This way. Okay.
It's not her.
See my point? You hear all the wishing pennies that already exist? They're already here, right? They're already here. But you had like a very specific request. You want people to get engaged with projects that are already in existence, and
Or in existence, or just if they want to be, if it wants to be better, like.
yeah, like how to
Yeah.
kind of
How do we-
activate your engagement and I have like 3 sets of dreams that are all like confluencing together at the same time. I just made up a word. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Confluencing? Would that be a word? I'm a professor. We're just going to call it that now. But there's a couple of wonderful things happening, right? One of obviously working for ARO and being Indigenous myself, I have a lens that's very much promoting Indigenous spaces. And if you aren't familiar, especially I can't be standing this close to Friendship House and not be nodding to the incredible project that has been launching right now as part of an Indigenous-led kind of health and healing and recovery system and project that has been many, many, many years in the making. Friendship House is one of the longest-standing Native-led organizations in the Bay Area, been around a really long time, and finally stepping into their own green initiatives, which is part of trying to address how come Mission doesn't have any trees and how come Mission doesn't have anything green. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the city won't invest in things like sprinkler systems down here for trees, right? Because that takes money. And they're like, no, we don't have any money. How come the Mission's not having trees? Well, they can't afford irrigation down here. I'm like, okay, well, that's a pretty practical experience, right? So Friendship House is out there trying to address that, and they've got the Village Project moving forward. It's breaking ground in this upcoming spring. I won't say a month because they've moved it like 4 times. You know how projects roll. But they are, let's just say, hopefully going to be breaking ground any minute now. And that's going to be a careful, glass flying. It'll be a building initiative, but also including many green infrastructure initiatives. Another one that I'm very excited about is for about 3 years now, there's been a group of us that have been working with DPH on the possibility of an Indigenous garden in Golden Gate Park. It would be the first of its kind. It's a historic partnership. We have been in conversations, like I said, for 3 years now. We've even gotten as close to mapping and finding a space and even stepping into beginning due diligence. And this is the kind of project that will force kind of city government structures to kind of engage in a conversation of what it means to engage in land-based relationships with Indigenous folks and create an Indigenous-led public access space inside of San Francisco for the first time since Indigenous folks lived here without everybody else. Right? And that's a very special kind of a moment, because what it does is it gets at that intersection space between equity, ecology, access, conversation, even opens up our possibility for food justice models. There's a very deep, profound potential here, so keep your eyes out for it. I also nod to Friendship House because they're one of the leading partners for it. That is something that then gets to my larger vision. I think I've even got Kieran on Zoom once talking about, I was like, Kieran, I have a dream. He's like, what's your dream? So I'm like, I have a dream. And you know, again, it's that push-pull conversation with like centering the human condition versus the ecological, or kind of like coming back full circle, right? Because we all want to do things like potentially pilot the return of the quail, which would be a really beautiful thing, or create more living habitat for butterflies, which are going extinct as this part of their migration is slowly being squished out and going away. We have one of the most beautiful snakes in the world here, that this is the only place she lives. She's gorgeous, right? The San Francisco garter snake. And being able to protect habitat corridors for these kinds of situations becomes important. But at the same time, every time somebody calls me and says, we want to do ecological restoration, I kind of have to smile and go, but do you really? Because if you really want to do ecological restoration, the outer sunset's a sand dune, y'all. That's why the trees keep falling over. Right? Or I want to bring the quail back. But do you? Because you're going to bring the quail back, which is going to increase the coyote population, because you're going to increase their food source. And you guys are kind of mad at the coyotes right now. I see lots of signs in all the walking, hiking spaces that be like, keep your dog on a leash, or the coyotes. And then they're like, now we've been talking about potentially doing things like coyote culling. Oh, let's not, right? So as we're busy saying, I'm fighting for ecology and the restoration of space, but I don't want that coyote to eat my dog. We've got balancing effects here, right? I don't want to sit and advocate for the restoration of a pilot project for quail coming back, then at the same time potentially sets up a bunch of beautiful quail coming in, and then all of a sudden they're gone again. We want to create projects that are about that sustainable vision, that future dance forward. And the reality of it is that future dance forward needs, this is now we're to my dream, sorry. It was like a long, I'm native, I'm sorry, I'm long. But my dream is that we have the possibility, because all of these projects exist in a way, is to have a living corridor that connects all the way around this beautiful city. That is a natural pathway for human, coyote, quail, butterfly, gecko, ante, even our unhoused folks who like to take beds in planters. Right? Because and unhoused folks might not like ecological conversation, but all of a sudden a brand new planter bed becomes a safe place to harbor for a night. I don't think that can be a wrong thing. And when we reframe that conversation, instead being mad at the community that's using the beautiful space that we're creating to find sanctuary and safety, that we need to be available to what the diversity of that conversation is. Because that is a conversation where sometimes in our indigenous farming practices, you planted extra rows for the deer. And then the deer ate their rows and we had ours. And that's just part of reciprocity, right? So if we are going to step into these conversations, we can't leave everybody behind. So that, I guess, would be my biggest advocacy, is that if we're not leaving everybody else who's part of that ecological circle behind, and that we're creating connections of ecological corridors that live for that meaningful movement, so we can all go back to that land-based practice. And when you see indigenous land-based practice projects coming up for community dialogue and conversation, come on out and join. Right? And there's people doing really good work right now. If you're looking for people to go support, just mention Poder and Hummingbird Farms. They often run like volunteer workshop days. Come out, come help do land tending, come get into community, hook up with them. They're going to have a wonderful list of volunteer opportunities for you. They're not the only ones, right? So there are plenty of options to engage. You just kind of gotta dig a little, but they're coming.
Oh my God, I'm so inspired right now, you guys. And this is incredible. Can we all just give a round of applause for our incredible panelists? Just really very, very appreciative of all of the knowledge and the amplification that you're doing for so many other people and projects and ideas. So we said we were going to keep this to an hour so that and hopefully if the panelists can stick around, if you have questions or something piqued your interest and you're like, ooh, I want to know more about Friendship House, I want to know more about what Stephen's talking about, tearing down the Nazi Central Freeway, or, you know, other Sarah M's talking about maybe she's got some money for me, for my neighborhood. And there's a bunch of folks also out in the audience. I want to recognize folks from Civic Joy Fund who are here, who are also doing great work to set up demonstration greening projects throughout San Francisco. I was told that someone from FUF was going to be here too. Yes! Do you have a petition for us to sign? Maybe? Okay, I'll come talk to you about that. So FUF is Friends of the Urban Forest is here as well. Again, my name is Sunny, and this was a joint venture with the Sierra Club, Green SF Now, and Propel. There's some sign-up sheets throughout with some QR codes. Also, I want to say that Sam over here in the front, who's been leading our little live stream, so if you want to go back later and are like, what did Sarah M say that the other Sarah M said? You can check it out on our website. And Sophia, who is also here from Propel tonight, and they might come by and just ask you, like, really quickly, like, yo, what's your hot take about tonight? Like, what was one thing that you learned? Yes, Sam?
We would love for you to come and tell us your hot take right over here,
Oh,
actually.
okay,
Yeah.
never mind. All right, so if you feel like that, if you're like, oh yeah, this is what I got out of tonight, we would love to capture that so we can have more of these events. Kieran, did you want to give a shout out to our hosts, or?
Thank you everyone for coming. We have another hour of wine, and so please just meet people.
Meet
and
people, talk.
Share your dreams. Put more pennies into
Share
the
your
well.
pennies into the well. Awesome.
Thanks, you guys.